Hello, everybody. It's your boy TJ, Dreadhead Productions Commander-in-Chief, and welcome to part 3, the conclusion of the breakup. Thank you all for checking out part 1 and 2. If you have not, I encourage that you check out part 1 and part 2. Tell a story about, the beginning of our relationship, the middle, and now part 3. Unfortunately, there is an end. So, want to talk to everybody. I don't know where I can start at. I think the last part that I stopped at, I talked a little bit about how you know somebody. How you know somebody. You can't, prove that there's something wrong, but you kind of feel it in your spirit. And I want to talk, about being called to preach. And I was called to preach at a young age, in my opinion. I've always been, in church because, my grandfather's a pastor. So we had to go to church every Sunday. You had to go to Bible study every Tuesday. You had to go to choir rehearsal because my mom was the president of the choir and we had to sweep up the church. So I grew up in church. And, I felt like I was called to preach. And for the most part, I accepted my calling. I started to go to the seminary. And, I went to the seminary, man, for 2.5 years. I'm actually like one semester away from, getting my theology certification. But, I really, I was really excited about it. I really was. I really felt like I accepted my calling and I was really happy that I did. And I felt like I was really helping people and really changing lives. And I really felt like I was doing what God wanted me to do. But I just felt like there was a problem because there was a lot of things that, I stopped doing. Like anybody that know me and, knew me before, knew I used to curse a lot. I just stopped cursing. I used to drink, I stopped drinking. Like I stopped doing all that stuff, man. I stopped doing all of that completely. And, in my opinion, I felt like that started to be a problem, even though she never said that, because a lot of the things that we used to do, we used to go out to, bars and clubs and stuff like that and hang out with each other. And sometimes like we'll just sit around the house and, start drinking and stuff like that, just to, have fun with each other. So, drinking and stuff like that and going out, that was a major part. And I kind of cut down on that. And I remember like one time, she asked me to go to the casino to a buffet to eat. And I was like, I don't want nobody to see me at the casino because, I'm a minister and stuff like that. Keep that in mind, y'all. I just want y'all to keep that in mind. And, I just felt like, she started to, get upset about that because I became something different, but I wasn't the TJ that she knew. I felt like, that started to be a problem. And, I at first, when I got into the ministry and stuff like that, I was asked to speak and I would go and speak at different places and stuff like that. She would come with me. And, even like at my home church isn't that big. My home church is kind of small. It just consists of like family members, man. It's not big at all, but she would still come there and support me and be there. And, it was cool, man. I didn't think anything of it. I thought that she would be accepting of my calling and everything like that, and everything would work out. But, I feel like that was the beginning of the end because, I felt like I was being put on a chopping block. I felt like if I was to get angry and stuff like that, she started to kind of hold that against me. Maybe she didn't. I'm just saying, so I think that by me being angry and stuff like that, and I'm going to be honest with y'all, man, when you angry, I don't care if you save, preach or not, man, curse words going to come out. And, I used to curse, like when I used to get upset and stuff like that, I ain't saying I used to just go all in, but, I used to curse and stuff. And I felt like that was just little nuggets. And all of a sudden, like, I noticed that, she stopped going to church with me. And, when I was asked to go places, and, even stopped going to my home church, and my grandfather would ask, where she is and all that. And, I couldn't really, tell him. I was like, well, she went to another church, which was the truth. She went to another church. So I thought maybe it was the fact of our church. Like I said, it's not a big church at all. It's not big at all. It's just family. And maybe it was something different than what she was used to. And maybe she didn't want, she used to say like she wants to go somewhere where she don't feel like she's being judged, like she can cry if she wants to cry. And I can understand that. Like if you're at a family church and the spirit gets you and you start crying, somebody might ask, man, what they crying for? What they got going on? You don't want to be judged. I understood that, but it was kind of hard for me to understand, like, okay, you don't want to go to my home church, but you didn't want to go with me when I spoke here and all that kind of stuff. So, and I noticed, like, we started to really get into it, like, the day before, I had to speak somewhere. And like I said, man, I just felt like that was just the beginning of the end, because I kind of changed. And, I just felt like, she was, wasn't really, she was on board, but, it was a change for her. But anyway, started to, go to seminary, started to speak and stuff like that. And, I really felt like I was really trying to change people's lives. And we were arguing all the time, man. Like, we would get into it about crazy stuff, like just unnecessary things. Like, I just felt like, even like the environment and stuff like that. Like, we would get into arguments about just the people, and I would get mad at her. And like I said, it's a culture shock. You coming from a big, huge place like Texas and moving to Mississippi, and sometimes she would get discouraged because, a lot of things that she's seen, people seem like, they would be okay with just being complacent. And, people seem like they don't have no drive. And me and her would kind of get into it about it, And, we would get into fights and stuff like that, because I would take it as if, if you're not happy here, then maybe you should leave. Because I felt like she was always upset, always talking about, being there and not wanting to be there. And it really kind of messed up my mood. So me and her used to get into it about it a lot, man. And I remember, we would sleep in separate rooms. Like, I would go in a whole different room, and, she'll be in a bedroom, and we would be so upset with each other, man. Like just about, things. But, eventually, both of us, by nature were stubborn. Both of us, she would be upset about something, but, we would have some kind of thing where it was almost like a peace offering. Like, I made something neat. You want something? Like, something like that, so that's how we always used to get, together. But, we used to get into it, man, just about stuff. And I just don't feel like, it was the place that she wanted to be. And I knew that. And I knew that the only reason she was down there was because of me. But, I just feel like, you may not want to be in a place like that. But still, we have each other, so it shouldn't matter where you are. I'm a person, I believe that I don't care where you are. You can be in a tent for all I care. If you have love and you have each other, that should be the only thing that matters. But maybe I should have understood a little bit more about how she felt, because she was coming from a different place. And I mean, I'll let y'all judge for that. Y'all let me know. But anyway, we used to get into it, but all of a sudden, I just, to me, and man, this is where, like I said, you can judge me all you want, but I just wasn't feeling like myself, man. I felt like I had to be the old me with a balance of the new me. So I was, going out and stuff like that, and I started to drink a little bit, more, like I was drinking and stuff, and all of a sudden, man, I was, I just wasn't happy, man. I just wasn't happy, with the situation at all. I ain't talking about with the relationship. I'm just talking about with myself. But, I still tried to, do that because I felt like it was making things better. And honestly, in my opinion, it was. Because she would say, I feel like I'm getting the old you back. I'm getting the old you. But I just wanted to make her happy, man, and if I feel like, just having a beer or something like that, if that'll make you happy, then, I'll make you, I'll do that. But at the same time, I felt like my ministry was struggling because, I wasn't paying that much attention to the Bible as much as I should. Most of the time, when I was speaking, I felt like, I knew, what I was talking about and stuff like that, and it would just get me by. And I felt like I was doing a disservice to people at the end of the day, and I just didn't feel right about that. And, it was very, very tough time for me. But I mean, like I said, our relationship was great. I mean, and this is where, the conclusion happened. We just, came down to New Orleans. Her sister was graduating from college and everything was going great, man. We went to the club that night and, we were drinking and stuff like that, man. We had like videos and, man, it just seemed like everything was right, man. Like everything was cool. Like me and her was like vibing on the same wavelength and everything, man. And I go back to that point because I feel like, man, ain't nothing going to stop us, man. I'm like, we finally got it, man. We were talking about, marriage and stuff like that because, honestly, it kept on getting pushed back because I was engaged for like 4 years, man. I was engaged for like 4 years and I wasn't really happy about it. And, I used to push for her to want to get married and stuff, but it's like, I'm not really ready. Why we got to get married right now and stuff. But finally, I talked to her and she said like, okay, after, we get my sister graduated and stuff like that and take care of that, then we can go ahead and sit down and focus on our wedding and stuff, And I was like, okay, that's fine. And, we were going to do it. So, we get back and a couple of days go by and I get to work early that morning and I text her and I tell her, I say, so when we're going to talk about, the wedding and getting invitations and stuff. And, she replied to me, she was like, why we got to talk about that right now? We don't need to talk about that right now. And I was like, you don't want to talk about that right now. I said, well, you told me after your sister graduation, we would talk about it. And she kept saying like, why can't we just be like how it was like when we were down there, when we were going out, like everything was good. And I was like, huh? Like you told me that we would get serious and talk about this, and yet you don't want to talk about it. And, and time went by and I kept on trying to talk to her. And, she would ask me, she finally asked, she was like, why should I have to be somebody's wife? Like, why do I have to be a wife? And I was like, huh? Like, where all this come from? Like, before you was all happy and stuff like that, and you wanted to get married, and now you don't know? I like, that's crazy. But, like I said, I loved her, and I wanted to be with her. And, I just like, okay, man, she'll get over it. And we started to talk about the wedding and stuff like that. Like, we started to talk about it. And then all of a sudden, like, man, we were clicking, man. We were clicking. Everything was going good. She would cook one night. I would cook one night. She would ask me if she's out, do you want something back? I'd do the same thing. Everything was cool. And I remember it was a Sunday night. And I would just finish watching a wrestling pay-per-view. And, like, she was just so, like, sweet and nice and stuff like that. And I'm not saying, like, she's not always like that, but just something wasn't right to me. It just wasn't right. And I couldn't sleep. I remember we went to bed and honestly, it was like, I just couldn't sleep, man. I couldn't sleep. And right there, man, we had a king size bed. And she was laid on one side, I was on the other. And in the center was her cell phone. And I promise you, I do not look in her cell phone. Like, I don't have a reason to. Like, I never looked in her cell phone. But something inside of me that night said, look. So I looked inside her cell phone. When I looked inside her cell phone, I seen a conversation between her and someone else. And the person was trying to hook her up with another person. And she said, well, I'm in a relationship and stuff like that. And the girl was like, well, I'm not going to ever hook you up with nobody no more. She was like, I tried to hook you up with this one guy and it didn't, and look how it happened. And she then started to go in and start talking about the guy. Saying, yeah, well, it wasn't going to end well because you knew what was going on. LOL. And then she started talking about, there's nothing wrong with a guy trying to ask about you and stuff like that. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, you in a relationship and you up here talking about a guy inquiring about you? Like, you about to be somebody's wife and you worried about somebody inquiring about you? Like, are you serious right now? But, of course, man, I didn't wake up or anything, I just snapshot the pictures to my phone. You know what I'm saying? I sent them to myself. So, and the crazy thing about this was that the lady who texted, the guy that she was asking my ex about, my ex, she was actually in the car with me one day on a social media having a conversation with this guy while I was driving. And that's the only thing in my mind. Like, I was thinking like, are you serious, man? I'm in a car and you was talking to this guy? Like I said, I went to bed and I chilled. And I woke up the next morning and I was like, I got some very simple questions and I need some very simple answers. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to give you a part 4 because I went a little bit longer than I thought. So if you want to find out what happened, be my guest. But there will be a part 4 of this video. And hopefully you all enjoyed it and maybe you put some things into perspective. But part 4 will really seriously be the conclusion of this video. And I'll tell you what I learned or if I learned anything. I promise part 4 will be the last. We global.